So, hey, welcome back, everybody. This is week 2 of our 3 sessions. And really, when Kevin and I sat down and talked about what we're doing, we really thought about, hey, how is this relevant to me as a SolidWorks user? You know, we're thinking about the guy that has, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seats of SolidWorks. We're PDM naked a lot of times, and it's really what it fits. So, last week we kind of discussed the foundation. This week it's all about the connection with SolidWorks. And Kevin and I are both going to have a lot of fun next week because we're going to use new CAD products, the ones built into the cloud. So I don't know if anybody got an opportunity to go see some of the Dassault's what I called avalanche of good content, and we'll keep back to about where this is all going. Okay. So again, we're all SolidWorks users right here, and you saw this slide last week, and I'm going to kind of start in this exact slide again. You're going to notice I have my 3DExperience PLM services here. Kevin, notice the icon right above what I'm highlighting there.
The icon above where you're highlighting.
Yeah,
no, I cannot.
My PDM icon. So Kevin and I have both used
Gotcha.
a lot of
PDM. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, and so we have PDM on our systems. We may have PDM standard in case that's what's on this one right now, and PDM Pro and everything like that. What we're going to cover today, if you're familiar with the PDM in SolidWorks, you're going to see a lot of similarities. Okay, so we saw this slide last week too. Kevin, did you see the new compass this week? It's a fancier shape. It's got more shape to it, but it's the same button.
Yeah.
Just modernized.
Yeah, really nice.
Okay.
Yep.
So last week, we really brought you through roles, applications, and widgets, okay? And we really kind of focused on the business innovator role, and we showed you, the drive, and we showed you the play and the search tools and the swim, which was kind of important, the communication tools. This week, we're going to go into both SolidWorks, but we're really getting into what's called the industry innovator role. And the real focus here is going to be on collaborative lifecycle. And then I'm going to touch on collaborative tasks just kind of lightly, just to give you an idea. As you can see, there's a lot more apps here. Some of them are pretty darn impressive. Kevin and I were talking about collaboration approvals earlier. I'm not going to show you any of this today. That's at some point this summer, we'll have a webinar on that alone. That's really kind of a PLM system, a little light version of it that's pretty darn sweet. I'm not really going to touch on project planning today. I'll just show you a slide, and next week we'll probably jump from project planning into what we're doing. So we'll kind of hit that way. Make sense, Kevin?
Yep, works for me.
There you go. Okay, so what are we going to do this week? We're going to kind of follow our conversation of last week. Kevin and I had a discussion in Swim about a little project. We'll get back to that, and I'm really going to give you the idea using SolidWorks, how we open it, about search and space and that type of thing. Do a real simple change, and then we're going to kind of give you an idea how it flows through. You ready?
I'm ready.
Beautiful. Okay, so get back to the story that we're talking a little bit about our concept. You saw that Kevin last week took my bonehead idea and said, hey, that's not bad, let's work on it. And we had a conversation about it, Kevin and I, and the feedback he gave after taking kind of a deep look was, hey, it's pretty good. We could use it the way it is. He goes, I kind of like the idea that the web's a little thicker. And so we got a real simple design change. We're going to just kind of walk through that change. But all our communication was here. And if you saw Kevin and I's schedule last week, we didn't really get a lot of time to talk to each other. So, using these tools, kind of fit everything in together with the files and everything like that. Later on, you're going to see me create Kevin a task. I'm actually going to hand him the model that way. So Kevin got the task already. And Kevin, did you get a couple emails from me yesterday, day before?
I did. Sign the task to me. Yep.
Telling you what's going on. So when something changes, you get highlights if you want them. Good way to work. So again, we're going to start in SolidWorks. I'm going to explain a little 3D space. We're going to hit the search again. If you don't know what a working directory is, you'll learn very quickly. It's pretty simple. And we're going to talk about maturity, which some people don't think I have much of, especially my wife. And we'll talk about status and some different ideas like that. So here's SolidWorks. I'm going to go into SolidWorks, and I'm going to start working. I'm going to log in to the system. Now, most of you, everyone has a 3D passport now, even to get into SolidWorks, anything SolidWorks. So you already have one of these to get in. So I'm just logging in because I'm hooking in to the cloud right now. Okay, now what I'm doing is picking my collaborative space. Now, last week we talked about drive. This week we're going to talk a little bit about more space. And in a few moments, we'll kind of get a little deeper. But right now I'm going to go into the Midnight project that we got here. I'm going to be the owner, so I got all the rights I can have. And we're going to log in. It's taking a few seconds. Everybody's home working in my house, so everything works a little slower now. 5 people in here hooked in. Okay, so now I'm in the session. Not much going on, pretty not exciting. Now, what do most users do? We go to File, we go to Open. Well, I'm going to File, Open, and I'm going into what's called my working directory. Okay, and you'll know something different here. I got maturity state, everything's in work. You see my revisions. You see a bunch of information. We'll talk about the symbols in a few minutes, Kevin. But I'm just going to open up a little assembly here and click it open. So again, just working normal. This is how we always work. No different. That's the point. Now let me close this thing up in a few seconds. Just give you an idea. I'm going to open it again by searching. So let's use the search tools like we used last week. I'll type in new concept. It's there in the list, but I'll type it in anyways. Now I'm not using the tags and going deep, so I got to scroll through a little bit, and I'm going to grab what's called a physical project, just drag and drop, and that's how we do most of our work now, drag and drop. So I do that more often than the first thing I showed you opening. I don't really worry about my working directory. So a couple little things that going on here. Kevin, you use working directories every day, right?
Yes, all the time. I mean, it's a common concept that we had in work group, and really any job you find a space to work. That's where the file sits, and then you put it in its final resting place when you're done. Yeah. So very, very similar.
Okay. So in PDM, we always have a couple things that we think about. We have ownership, basically. So do I have ownership of the file here? Same kind of concept here. So my status, you see a little symbol. There's a checkbox. Basically, that is telling me that the file that I have open on the screen is the same as the file in the vault or in my 3D space. The key is telling me, hey, I have it unlocked. I'm the one who can work on it. You notice the 2 screws there? I don't have them unlocked. They're fine. And I have everything as a ref. They're all set here. They're all working in the life cycle of in work. And in a few moments, you're going to see more on the life cycle. Okay, so that's pretty much the screen. I mean, that's not much different than what you're used to seeing. Okay, so 3D space. I'm going to show you a little vignette on this too. It's kind of an idea. I kind of look at a 3D space because I'm a PDM guy. I look at it as my vaults. And our system, we don't have many. The one we're working in right now is called the Midnight Patrol. A little Lauren Hardy movie, kind of take off on that. It's pretty simple. You'll notice that my yin yang part that we were just working on is sitting right in there. So let me give you a little run through of really what this is about. Okay, so I'm going to, right now I got my filter. Let me turn that off. Let me get back into this space a little bit. And I'm hooked on, I'm already checked on the part, if you see that. So I'm getting information from that. So I didn't check that. Now this is my 3D space. It's called Midnight Patrol. Couple information. It is, visibility is private. That basically means the only 2 people can see it is Kevin and I right now. Okay. Now we're both leaders and owners of this, but we can bring in contributors and authors. A contributor doesn't have as much power as an author. So depending on who you bring in and what you want to work, you can have some fun with this. So we got some analytics. This one's pretty boring. There's 2 of us. We're both leaders, and we're the only ones who put things in. Doesn't mean much. There's also groups, so I can group people. Very similar to PDM and different things that's going on. Again, if I click on a part, all that information is from the part. So back and forth from the part, different things. I'm going to go into a different space here. We have one that's company space. There's more users, and just give you a little bit of an idea of here. It's not a lot more content going on, and in here, a lot of users. And I'm going to notice a couple things that go on there. There's no groups. We're not separated by groups yet. It's a good way to work. And I'm looking for myself right here. I'm curious what I am. So I'm scrolling around trying to find it. I wish if we were grouped, I would know a little quicker. Where am I? Now there I am. So I found out here that, hey, I'm only an author. So can you do me a favor at some point, Kevin, and give me more power? Look at that. All the authors do more of the work. The leaders didn't do as much. I kind of want to be in the group that doesn't work as hard. So it's a 3D space. It's kind of like a drive that has control. And we're going to show you some more control on this in a moment. Really the idea of what's the life cycle of the part. Kevin, you got anything to add to what's a 3D space?
So 3D space, I mean, the first thing that people think of with 3D space is a similarity to a folder system. And with 3DExperience, I don't really equate 3D space to a folder system. You really, there's other apps that will organize the data, but we dump all the data into the space and organize it in a different way. So there's no need to have a space for every single project. This space could contain data from many projects. Now, you may create a separate space for permission reasons. There may be people that can't have access to certain projects and you separate them out that way. But don't think of these as folders. Just think of them as storage bins for information.
Exactly. And that's why we have our secret project that nobody knows about, right, Kevin?
That's right.
Okay, so we're doing all this work. We're in SolidWorks, back in SolidWorks, and when you're doing lifecycle, you got to do a design change. So I'm going to do a quick design change on this part based upon Kevin's input that he gave me. He basically wants that little rib just to be a little thicker. Pretty simple. So we're going to run through a little design change. I'm kind of walk through now. I already have ownership. I reserved this part. And so when I open it up, I can work on it. If I didn't have ownership, it would be a read-only part, and I'd have to take ownership to get it. Okay, so they call that reserve here. I'm going to keep using the word ownership to reserve or unreserved. So do not look at how I modeled this part. It's been modeled a while back. It was one of those things late at night. You kind of an idea, you keep going, and not always pretty. So I did a quick design change on it, made the rib a little thicker. You can kind of see it. Hardly matters what the change is, but what I want to do now is check it back in and get it back into the system. So look at my icons. I got these little orange folders. That's telling me, hey, that's not saved. My file was modified and it's not saved again. So I'm going to come back in and save the file. When I save it, I'm going to put a comment. Most important thing to do is to turn comments on, so you have to put them in and force you to do it, because then you know what's going on. So I just stick in the web here. I'm going to convert all these so they can be used in all the tools within 3DExperience. I'm actually going to put a new revision in these. So they're going to have a vision A and a vision B right in this system right now. And I'll save all this. Now, I did a couple of things that I probably shouldn't have done right there. I'll show you in a second here when it finishes. I actually revised everything, even the things that didn't change. But that's just data. Some people want all the revisions of an assembly to be the same when they push it out. Some people don't care if they're different. Here, we're going to have them all the same. It's just data. There's not two versions of the screw. There's not two versions of the door, but they're now different rev. And now everything in the vault is the same. I also gave up ownership. So I'm going to reserve, go back and reserve a couple of these things. Just one by one. Could have done it in a group. Okay. So from a SolidWorks user standpoint, that's how I work different in SolidWorks. The only thing really different for me is the concepts I'm going to bring into play where I have ownership or don't have ownership. You know, if I'm working by myself, I'm going to keep ownership all the time. And then knowing it's in the vault so that I can get it anywhere. It's in the cloud, it's sitting there. What do you think, Kevin?
I love it, Tom. And I think when we think about what the cloud brings to our customers, the ability to put the data on the cloud in 3DExperience and invite somebody who's not part of your internal network in your organization to bring somebody in, like a contractor, a vendor that you just happen to be working in a particular project on, or to use this just for your own PDM system. Both of those scenarios really play a big role into why this 3DExperience is going to make life a little easier for us as a SolidWorks user. I don't know how many times I've had a conversation with an organization who has somebody outside the building that they need to send data to, and they're sending it with, through email or Dropbox or some other functional system, but then they get it back in a zip file that's not organized, and it's this back and forth. And sharing this cloud-based space and putting the data out there just opens up those possibilities. I think you can appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm going to point one thing out before I move on here. There's a little hard hat in the lower left of the screen. That's actually for change action. We didn't manage this with the change action. We're pretty informal what we're doing in this project. We don't need lots of paperwork and detail. But if we did, we'd be seeing that little light up and be working off of that. So when this happened, we'd have a change action process going through with a record on that. And if this was a medical part or something like that, that could be pretty valuable. So Kevin, earlier we were talking about 3D Space, and you were explaining to everybody how it was not a folder system, but sometimes you want to have a little bit of an ability to actually organize your project. And there's something called a bookmark. It's kind of familiar to a project in PDM. I'm going to give a little run through of what it actually looks like. So I'm going to come into the system here, and I'm going to go to my data, and I'm going to make a bookmark. I'm going to put some of these parts in because, I'm scrolling through all these files, and, who wants to scroll? You can see my nice sourdough loaf of bread I made this weekend. A lot of files, a lot of pieces of information here. So I'm going to go into the bookmark tool. I have a door project. There's a guide that I got to work on. There was a nose clip on the bottom. And this particular thing that we're working on is just the flush handle. If you guys thought flush handle was for a toilet, you were mistaken. So I got a new bookmark in this little project. It's a sub bookmark in a sense. And hey, I just want to add stuff to it. So I'm going to come in here, use the search tool real quick. I can put one piece in. I'll just put the concept in. Now, in reality, I would have created the bookmark before I created the pieces and put them in that way, but you can do it either way. So that particular piece is in, and let's go put them in a different way. So I have a bookmark. By the way, I'm going to make it a favorite because I'm going to be working on my flush handle. So it's at the top of the list all the time. When I'm done with the project, I'll remove it as a favorite. And here, let's just find something else on it. Take the door, whatever I want to take, and still scrolling through, not using my search tools. Don't have much going on there. So I might as well put the handle in it. So I'm going to drag it right up into the favorite. Yeah, I do want to commit it in there. And this is how, Kevin, this is how we work now. We mostly drag and drop things, right?
Yeah, it's nice to add it that way. And kind of a side note, Tom, when you check in from the add-in in SolidWorks, you can create a bookmark on the initial save. So you don't have to do this as a secondary operation. I think bookmarks is probably the closest thing I can think of related to structure of folders like we have in Windows. So, yeah. But the neat thing about this is you create the bookmark for the time that you're working on it, and then you just you can either keep the bookmark or you can remove it, so it's not in your list. It's creating a structure for that moment in time.
Yeah. So I took this little detour, this little subset here for the bookmark, just to kind of give you an idea that it's here and how we'd use it. We're actually, with this project, it's so simple, we're not going to come back to it. What we're going to get into is life cycle, and really about the simple changes that we're going to make on that. And probably the best way to do it is to go into the parts and kind of show you an idea. So I'm going to take this new concept here, and I'm going to drag it and drop it into the lifecycle tool. Okay. So you'll notice that we have B and A and I'm going to be, they're both in design. So private, in design, frozen, released, obsolete. That's my simple workflow. Let me show you the related objects. Now everybody knows in SolidWorks I have an assembly, and an assembly has a header and it knows everything that's in it. So what I'm going to show you here is, yeah, this is the related explorer for this particular part, and it shows me all the pieces that go into the part. That's kind of fun, but you know, I got that anyways. I can do that anyway. So let's go back to our data and let's go back to our door handle. And let's do the same thing. So let's go in here and look for what's related. Now this is important. Parts don't know where they're used. So, you know, Kevin and I, we made a change to the door handle. And now we need to look at what the children are to the door handle and what's active. And you see that's bookmarked where it's located. So that part, one of the children of the part, is the assembly. The assembly changed because that part changed. So if this part was in 15 assemblies, we'd want to know, and this is actually one of the ways we would know. Now I'm showing you in a nice graphical form, but you can make a list and put it out. So when a change occurs, one of the most important things, and this is what I don't have in SolidWorks, is where a part is used. Now, Kevin and I talked about it, so we had a conversation, so I'm not freezing this and going through a design process and a approval process. So I just changed my part. I just released it. I'm going to refresh my screen, and it's released. So that's a basic workflow process. That's it. There's not much there from the standpoint of complexity. You notice that the transitions that occur, we can lock it so people can't have them. Kevin, this is pretty similar to a lot of your PDM, right?
Yeah, very similar. And I think it's a good note that life cycles is optional, not required. So for your organization, if you have no PDM today and you need a process of designing and releasing, this will accommodate that. For those of you folks who are just trying to get external vendors involved and bring them in third party, it's not necessary to use this, although you may have life cycles so that you know when something's changed and that the vendors, gotten to a point. So, they're neat concepts, simple concepts, and very easy to put in place.
Yeah, so I kept going. Now, we could have opened up the assembly and checked, did the change, the life cycle change to everything at one time. You saw me as Kevin was talking. I updated the life cycle of the assembly itself. I just brought it back in. I just wanted to, just came back to my system, brought it back in from the vault. Everything's updated. Everything, the status is the same. What I'm going to do here, though, is we decided to do another change. Now, this is good. It works. I actually 3D printed this, and it's on my door now, actually. But now we want to try something new, and the idea was let's remove the screws. So I've been SolidWorks, and I said, okay, let's come here, and I created a new revision. Now, notice next to the yin-yang part there's a little plus sign. That just tells me there's a new version. We're not even using it yet. This concept here was released. It's how it's going. So what I'm going to do here is say, hey, let's go grab that new version. So I'm going to start working on the new part. And it's giving me all the versions. So I have 3 versions now. B, the one that's released, A, the original, and this C, which hasn't been changed yet. So I'll just grab C. I just want to give you a feel of a simple workflow. Even though it's released, it's doing something, I'm still working with it. Okay. Notice my assembly now isn't saved because it has a different part, but I actually can't save it because it's released. If I tried to save that, it'd say, no, you can't do it. So I would have to take the assembly right now and go make a new version of that too. So now you should see A, B, C, the one I just made. It's in design again. Now, I'm going to do something else here too. You're going to notice that I forgot to put a revision comment in. So I like revision comments. So let's type one in. I don't want to get scolded for not having it. So Kevin said, Tom, I got an idea too. I want to work on this on your part. and we both want to work on this same part. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to branch this part. So we're now at a part. I'll just change the name so we know it's separate a little bit, but you know it's going back to revision A. It's got a new name and it's branched. So now we have two copies of this. Two of us are working on different ideas. We'll come back together. One of them might be better than the other, and we'll go with that. Now, Kevin just got an email telling him about his part. He's going to get another email after that too, because in a few moments we'll give you an idea on that. And here I'm going to put a revision comment. So Kevin, when he sees it, he knows what's going on. So this is Kevin's attempt. So Kevin, have you worked on that yet?
No, I haven't worked on it. I ignored your emails, Tom. I'm sorry. But this concept of branching is very, very useful in terms of concept design, and I've seen it a bit with with revision, like pre-revision work, where you want to try something and you're not really sure if it's going to work out, and if it's going to end up being a new concept or not. But this interface here with Lifecycle, it's clear that what you have in front of you, right? We have multiple revisions, we have branches, and if you're working with anybody inside the building or outside the building, there's no doubt what's going on with each of those, so you can make your decisions.
Now, Kevin, you notice in the lower right corner, I got that little hard hat again for change action. Now, we're not getting into that here, but I mean, we could make this much more formal, much more steps, more involvement, and more detail by hitting change action. What I'm going to do is something a little different, though. We're going to keep we're going to be informal still here. So I'm actually going to create Kevin a task. And so I'm going to jump into collaborative tasks from this particular spot here. And I'm actually going to take the part that we just made here and associate it to the collaborative task. So I'm going to make his life easy. When he goes in and says, hey, what do I have to do? He'll be just handed it. Okay. So let me run a little video on this. And here's my task list that I have here. Not much in it. I've done all the work. Actually, there should be everything's done because I made a loaf of bread this weekend, and that's all the stuff to make us another loaf of sourdough. And what I got to do is change what platform I'm in and what's my vault or my 3D space. And I'm creating a new task. And this task is going to be for Kevin. If I could only type, I'd go much quicker.
So as this is running through, one of the things I immediately think of is how all the different ways that we handle tasks. The 3DExperience platform. Now we're talking about connecting SolidWorks to the platform and storing the data on the platform, but now the concept of realizing that we can do a lot more right where all the data is, tasks, life cycles, we expand our capability without having to jump into other systems to do that.
So I'm estimating it's going to take you about 5 days because I know your calendar, and I didn't put a finish date, so we didn't put a clock on this. So it's very informal right now, and I'm just searching for the part because you're not even going to have to look for it. It's associated now to this particular task. Now I got to come find you. And, I kind of clicked too quick here. So let me go back into the maturity state. So I can make them preliminary. Nobody knows about them. When they're ready to go, I let them loose. When he's ready to work on it, he goes in work. When he's done, he's done. And it goes through the process. So he's got an attachment. When he finishes it, he can attach his deliverable on top of it. When he finishes it, I will have the deliverable. I'll know where it is. I won't even have to look for it. Pretty basic. Real simple way to work. What do you think, Kevin?
Tom, I can see this with external vendors when you have a particular action that you want them to use, and you've invited them to the platform to collaborate on the SolidWorks data, and you want to, give them some guidance of what they need to work on, attach the files directly to it. An external vendor isn't going to need to, go into the 3D space and find the data. They're going to be able to see the data directly at the task. So I think these are really important. And for me, just keeping track of all the things I have to do and collaborating on those is helpful.
Yeah, so this collaborative task tool is pretty nice. It kind of works together, but the tasks are somewhat individual. And the next week when we work on our project, Kevin and I are going to use a project plan. And I'm not going to jump into the project planning today, just based on time. But what I wanted to do is give you kind of a concept. So yeah, I was goofing around with this, and I made a project plan for making sourdough. In reality, it was very good. We had it Sunday, so I cooked it and ate it, and that's fun. But you see all the tasks. I had a couple milestones. We haven't crossed them, but you see where the timeline is. And basically the idea, hey, nothing's at risk here. This is just a summary of a project. Real quick way to look at it in any project. You notice I do have a project for the flush mount. We didn't actually create a project plan yet. We did all our work without it. We worked kind of informally, but we very easily, and next week we'll kind of jump into this and have a pretty basic project plan for what we're doing, just to give you an idea. Again, our tasks from this are associated here versus the task I just made. So all the lists in my task you saw were from these project plans.
Very nice. So when you looked at project planning, these are all optional pieces. These are pieces that you'll have. They're PLM type concepts that you'll be able to initiate. You never know when implementing one of these app functions, whether it's going to help you move your project along in a way that's going to speed things up. So this is like tools in the tool chest. In project planning, we'll dump a little bit more information into that next week.
Yeah, and so everything we've showed you we can do in many different ways. The real key and the real value that Kevin and I got out of this is the idea that we're in one spot. So we're not using Trello or Asana or Microsoft Power Projects or anything like that. We're not using Dropbox and all different things. I think I got files from 4 different ways already this week. We got one place to get everything. We got everything associated. We have knowledge. We have data that we can take information from, and it's really clean. Fun way to work. Okay, I think that was the end of my slide. I'm supposed to have one more slide, but it went away. So that's okay, because it was just a repeat of the first slide. So let me shut down my my screen for now, and you guys can all see.
So Tom,
yes.
Let's just kind of reiterate where we see a great fit for these tools right now. So I envision really 2 types of organizations right now that really should seriously consider this. One, you're PDM naked, right? You have no data management solution. Maybe you're concerned about the cost to getting into data management, the infrastructure required to get into data management. There is obviously with 3DExperience the opportunity to store your data on the cloud, have very limited requirements as far as setup of the system. I mean, pretty much turn it on and go type system, and the infrastructure costs are nil. So you can get into, I think most people we talk to about PDM, they all want it. It's in a lot of cases, cost is a barrier to get started. So this eliminates a lot of the costs associated with that. So I see this as a heavy focus. Is if you're PDM naked. Number two is really just what we've been talking a lot about is working with remote or external vendors. What I can do, let's say Tom was my external vendor, I could place the data out on 3DExperience, and I can send an invitation to Tom to join my platform and to collaborate on the data on my platform. I can have a private space with the data for Tom. I can have a private community that we can talk about it. We can have tasks between us. These are all optional pieces, but it facilitates much better than what we have today on the desktop options to communicate and collaborate with someone externally to the organization. Probably for me, it's been one of the biggest pieces, eye-opening pieces that I've seen in our customer base where 3DExperience is going to really fit well. All of this data is hosted on the 3DExperience servers, and at some point we'll talk about the infrastructure behind that. But the no-cost IT, the ability to access the data from anywhere, anytime. If you saw last week's session, I can open up these models on my cell phone, on the tablet, using 3D Play. I think those two scenarios are very, very, they stick out when we talk about connecting SolidWorks, using collaborative design for SolidWorks in the industry innovator role, and the base platform tools. So
yeah, exactly. It makes life so much easier for that chair. Do we have any questions being asked? I don't see the questions from my screen, so.
Not at this point. So if you have any questions about what we showed today, need some more clarification on what you've seen, feel free to post them. The webinar will be recorded, and you will have access to rewatch this. Again, we're trying to give you a taste of what's happening here. This is, it's changing rapidly. There's a lot of apps and roles that are being added to the platform that give us even more functionality, more value. And we know as SolidWorks desktop users, this really gives us some more possibilities. So if you have any questions, please post them in the questions section of GoToWebinar, and we'll answer them now. I don't see anything as of yet.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to Kevin or I or anybody at CAD Dimensions for any specific questions you have. I have been doing a few go-to-meetings one-on-one with people regarding this, and I know Kevin has too. I have a couple more today and tomorrow. But feel free, any specific questions for your environment, let us know.
And next week, we're going to be talking specifically about the design tools on the 3DExperience platform, how they will complement the desktop products and how we can utilize those and some of the unique technologies that those bring as well.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
So it doesn't look like we have any questions, Tom, so thank you. Thank everyone for attending, and hopefully we'll see you all next week. Take care.